Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Trolleheim with your host, Rabbi Anibal Maas. And I guess it's Happy Thanksgiving. And I guess I was not really aware of the Thanksgiving being today, right? Because it's not Thanksgiving in Canada, although for us Jews, every day is a Thanksgiving opportunity. But yes, I guess in the United States is the fourth Thursday of November. And somebody has to explain to me in the chat why it doesn't have a fixed date. This seems to be like a dispute between rabbis and Karaites about the date of Shavuot, where rabbis always prefer fixed dates, and the Karaites didn't care about that, and they said that we start counting. It's for them Shavuot is always on a Sunday, and that's a good thing. But this is like I don't know why is it always on a Thursday. It was the fourth Thursday in November. I would like to know. But what I would like to tell you about Thanksgiving and Turkey. And by the way, I'm using a new microphone, so let me know if everything goes well with this. It's fancier. I know the other one looked fancy to you guys, but this is even fancier than the one that I had before. So if there is any issues or the volume is not loud, just let me know, and I have plenty of room here to adjust. This is a more powerful microphone, so let me know. Welcome, David. So let me tell you something about Thanksgiving, and then everybody will think whatever they want about it, right? But I have to say it. Um, Thanksgiving, Canada, United States, we eat turkey. Am I right? Am I right? We eat turkey, Canada, United States. Do you know how you say turkey in Hebrew? Does anybody know how to say turkey in Hebrew? And by the way, I'm ready with my coffee today. It's a double espresso. So turkey in Hebrew is hodu. Hodu. You know what else is hodu in Hebrew? Giving thanks. Lehodot, to give thanks. And it's also part of the name Yehudi, the Jew. We are Jews because we come from the tribe from the kingdom, let's say, from the tribe of Judah. Okay, it was Yehuda, then became the kingdom of Judah, and people from the kingdom of Judah were known as Jews. But in Hebrew it's Yehudim, and the word Yehudim, or the word Yehuda, also contains the Hodu root. So the name of Yehuda is connected to the concept of giving thanks. So that's why I said at the beginning of the class that for a Jew, every day should be Thanksgiving Day, because it's part of our essence. It's on our names. It's on our name, it's on our label. If you are Yehudim, we are Jews, are the ones who give thanks. But I thought it was very interesting that also we eat turkey, Thanksgiving, considering that the word in Hebrew for turkey is hodu, who also gives thanks, also means thanksgiving. As far as I understand, it's unrelated. It's not like the how you call the people who how you call it, the one who instituted Thanksgiving in the United States. I know they have a special label. It's not that those people knew about this, but it's a nice coincidence. It's a nice coincidence that they eat turkey, and turkey, it means hodu in Hebrew, and hodu means Thanksgiving. Anyway, so welcome Ariel Lee, welcome Julia Trisler. Let's see who else is here. Brenda is here, Shelly is here, David is here, and see Sam Bailey is here, and Lori is here. Welcome everyone. If there is anybody else, please say hello so we can always put a name. Welcome Judy Sharak. Good afternoon to you. So it's American Thanksgiving, and some of us are in Canada, but many of you are in the United States. So it's nice that we are all kind of learning from each other. Like, yeah. Brenda, you said, "Are you taking role? What does it mean? What am I meaning? What am I missing? What am I missing?" In any way. Oh, Ariel Lee says, "I'm giving an American friend. I read about rabbinical protest against Thanksgiving in 1868 in Philadelphia." Okay, I guess I have to go read about too. I try to learn why, but roll call? What is a roll call? Yeah, in Canada it's earlier. I guess if we wait some years, if we wait too long into November, the turkey will freeze before we can eat it. So it's in a different date. Thanksgiving here is closer to Sukkot usually, which is also interesting to connect the two, right? And yeah, or taking role with attendance. No, I don't take attendance. I just want to say hi to everybody. When I have classes here, when you go to a class in person, it's nice when everybody knows everybody, right? You probably know on how, you go to a new class and the teacher will usually say, "Why don't you introduce each other?" And everybody will say their names and everybody say hello and stuff like that. So that's what I like to do at the beginning. Ariel Lee said, "I can see the email. It has to do with Christian elements in its original." Yeah, yeah, of course. It was the United States was heavily influenced by some Christian traditions, but at a certain point, it's okay. Who could be against giving thanks? I think it's a beautiful thing for all of us to learn to give thanks. Yeah, yeah. Brenda was joking. I know that she was laughing with the little face there, but then I didn't know the idiom. Roll call. Guys, you have to understand those are idioms, right? It's if you say to me, like taking attendance, well, I will understand that. But if you throw an idiom at me, I may be a little lost here and there. Okay, you should know that about me by now. Okay, so why don't we start with the parsha? This is the parsha that Jacob finally, he left home and he went to the new place, to Haran, the land of Haran, and there is where he got married. He was kind of conned by Laban, his father-in-law. So in one sense, sometimes the rabbis point out that Jacob was he tasted his own medicine, if you can say, because he remember how he tricked his brother, and he got away with it. He left the house, and then the first thing that happened to him when he went to the new place is somebody conned him, and he thought he was marrying Rachel, and then in the morning with the light, he realized that he spent the night with Leah, with Rachel's sister, and after he worked 7 years. 7 years he worked for Rachel. And then he wanted to kill Laban. And Laban said, okay. Let's make another deal. Okay? You can marry Leah right away. Rachel right away. You can do that. But then you have to work another 7 years for me. But this time, you don't have to work first and then I will give you the prize. You can marry the woman you love now but then you have to do that. Lori, what at mandrake? Oh, that is. I think it's supposed to be some kind of vegetable, but we don't really know what it is. And they're mentioned in the parsha. They're supposed to promote fertility in women. Yeah, I think it is a little bit of we don't unless somebody in the group knows what it is. My understanding is we don't really know. We don't really know what exactly the parsha is talking about when it mentioned this thing that they were trying to get pregnant. Yeah. In any case, okay, let's begin. Let's bring it because I want to start with that. I didn't really want to go to the topic of Rachel and Leah and how Leah is the one who started to have babies and Rachel couldn't have babies and she was kind of crazy. But you know that by now you should know that this is a common thing, right? For the mothers of Israel that they were all barren until God said so. Have you noticed that? Sarah didn't have a baby until God said so. Then Rebecca didn't have a baby until God said so. And now Leah had babies right away. Why? Because the Torah makes it clear that Jacob kind of resented Leah. He wanted to marry Rachel. He fell in love with Rachel pretty much right away. And he was so happy because remember, the difference between Jacob and Isaac is when Eliezer went to Haran to get a wife for Isaac, he went with money. So of course he was received like as a prince. Welcome, Eliezer. Come to our house. Which daughter you want? Oh, Rebecca. Sure, you can take Rebecca, but because the money that was involved in the transaction was huge, huge. Eliezer, remember, he got all these camels loaded with money. But now Jacob went there with nothing. It may have been one of the conditions to leave unharmed, because remember, Esau wanted to kill him. So he took nothing with him, and he got actually, in retrospective, Jacob probably thought that working 7 years towards the woman that he loved, he probably thought it was fair. It was a fair deal because remember, he had nothing. But then Laban didn't fulfill his part of the bargain, and he disguised Leah as Rachel, and Jacob married Leah. One, remember, you have to imagine. Come on, guys, use your imaginations. Jacob discovered that he actually married the wrong sister. It will be pretty difficult for him to actually love Leah after that, because you will start going into think of how did you do that to me? Why did you play along? Right? I can understand Laban, he's a crook, but you, Leah, and now I'm married to you. To be honest, guys, Jacob should know better because, hey, he did that to Esau. He pretended to be somebody else. So, shh, don't say anything, Jacob. This is probably God sending you a message. So you should know better and let it go. But the Torah makes it clear that he didn't let it go. Why? Because he loved Rachel and probably didn't pay much attention to Leah. Okay? What did God do to counterbalance that? Well, Leah is the one who started to have the babies now, giving Jacob all these baby boys. Now he has the firstborn came from Leah. And Rachel was suffering because, yeah, she had the love of her husband, but she also wanted to be a mother. So she gets kind of desperate and start doing all kind of weird things to get pregnant. Remember that Rachel also, when they finally, and I'm doing a huge jump ahead here, we have to go a little bit into the next parsha, when they finally left Haran to go back to Canaan, Jacob decided that it was time to go back home. Rachel was caught with her father idols. So we don't really know what's going on in Rachel's mind. Was it fully invested into the philosophy, monotheistic philosophy of Jacob? And this is kind of, and then she tried to do this magic ritual with the mandrakes. And Shelley Church, okay, first Brenda, you made a little, I bet you asked there Rabbi Google, and Rabbi Google said mandrake is a perennial herb with poisonous properties. And Shelley Chochinov asked another Rabbi Google, and she said, mandrake plant with fleshy parts resembling human body. Yeah, I learned. Yeah. And Brenda, you said the Torah is such a great soap opera. Yes, it is. Yes, it is indeed. So Let's go back to this verse that you have in front of you. Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheba, vayelech Harana. Okay, so Jacob left Beersheba and went towards Haran. The words of the Torah, Harana, but it's towards Haran. Okay, now what happened immediately after? The Torah says, Vayifga bamakom. Very interesting. And he came upon a certain place. The Torah doesn't say certain place. The Torah said he came upon the place. The place. Which kind of make you think that he already knew where he was going. And that's why the name is not even mentioned, because it's supposed, if the Torah doesn't mention the name, it's because it's supposed to be like a very obvious place. Maybe it was a place where many travelers stopped there, because back in the day, the Middle East didn't look the way it looks now. They have wild animals everywhere and many other dangers. So it makes sense that you will try to go to a place where other travelers will stop there, so you will feel a little bit safer. And it looks like that's what it is. So he came upon a certain place and stopped there, to that place that with another name, but he knew about it. He stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. This is something that as a kid, when I studied this at school, in Hebrew Day School in Argentina, I was always wondering how this is possible. Because let me tell you something, a little confession in front of the camera. I always struggle with getting the right kind of pillow. This is one of my biggest issues when I travel and I go to different hotels. I always suffer miserably with the pillows. Okay, it has to be the perfect one, to the point that sometimes, depends on what kind of travel or for how long, I take my own. I take my own pillow with me. I probably looks ridiculous walking at the airport, right, with the luggage and the pillow under my arm. I don't really care, because without a good pillow, I cannot have a good sleep. So I always wonder as a kid, when I already have this obsession with pillows, how is it possible that, Shelly, you are not the only one. How is it possible that Jacob was able to sleep using a rock as a pillow? Maybe you guys can explain to me how that's possible, and then I will share with you. I wanna read it in the chat, and then I will share with you what I learned about it. How is this possible that he was able to sleep with a rock under his head? Any takers? Smooth, flat stone. Uh, Brenda, he likes firm pillows. Yeah, yeah. So one thing that you can think here, and I like your comments. Oh, Shelley, perhaps the rock was symbol for something else. Yeah, there are comments about that too. But perhaps one thing is, and it happens to me too, right? Um, Judy said my husband and his sister husband did the same thing with their pillows. Yeah, I go, but my pillow is pretty big. It's the one that has. It's like, if you look at from the side, it looks like a U, so it has a neck support. That's the ones, and they are memory foam. So that's why, to me, it has to be the right height. That's why I take it with me, because I made a mistake once. I called in advance to the hotel, and they said that they provide with memory foam pillows upon request, and it had the same shape. But when I got it, they were too small, totally useless. So I learned my lesson. I tried with my pillow. Going back to this, the other thing could be, and it happens to me too. When you try to sleep in the floor, you need to put something under your head. So it could be that it's a rock, but then it doesn't mean that you don't put something on top of the rock, in between the rock and your head. It happened, sometimes I've seen people that they lie down and they roll their jacket and they put it on top of a book or something, and they have some height, but then you have the jacket as a pillow. It could be that maybe he had something, that some kind of schmate that he could roll and put it there. But I saw a painting once that the painting shows Jacob sleeping, and it was like a very high, almost like a small hill that he put there, and he was leaning. So he was sleeping on his side, leaning on top of that rock. So technically, it was under his head, but not as a pillow, but like a little reclining seat, if it makes sense to you. So it's very interesting. So I guess it piqued our imaginations how we imagined that Jacob slept there. Okay, but let's go now to what the rabbis are saying about this journey of Jacob. Okay, let's go to Midrash Rabbah. It says, Rabbi Pinchas, in the name of Rabbi Huna bar Papa, began his discourse on our verse with the following exposition. Again, remember what I always mention? Midrash Rabbah never goes straight to the point, always takes a detour, introducing a verse from a different section of Scripture. Okay? I will keep repeating it because it's a very important thing that we should know. This is the signature of Midrash Rabbah. Never going straight to the point, always taking a detour, introducing another verse that they will say that in the world of Midrash is connected to our parsha. So it says, they began the discourse on the verse with the following exposition. Then, and this is from the book of Proverbs, then you will walk safely on your path and your foot won't stumble. When you lie down, you won't be terrified. You will lie down and your sleep will be pleasant. Okay? So what is it saying here? And this is what sometimes I love to see, that Midrash Rabbah says that when Proverbs was written, the story of Jacob was in the head of the author, to get the inspiration to write these beautiful words, to have that, the words of giving this advice to people to feel secure in your God to the point that you can have a pleasant night. The way Jacob did. And we are going to see that. So now Midrash Rabbah explains, then you will walk safely on your path is an allusion to Jacob. As it states, Jacob departed. So it's talking about a journey. Okay, the journey of Jacob. And then Proverbs says, then you will walk safely on your path. It means that even before going to bed, going to sleep, Jacob was strong on his faith. He believed in God at the beginning of the journey, because that could be one of the biggest issues when people need to start a new journey. They get petrified by the uncertainty of a new path, right? Most of the time in these days, when we plan a trip, we know where we're going, we can research in advance. But what if you cannot do that? And you have to start a new project. And it happened to people who moved to a new city and know nothing about it, about the new society, the new culture, these new traditions. And it could be intimidating, terrifying. It takes a lot to start the journey with that sense of, no matter what comes my way, I will be able to handle it because God is with me. Wow, it takes a lot. But Midrash Rabbah is hinting that that was the kind of journey that Jacob started, right? The fact that he didn't have any material things with him, it might be also a hint of the total trust on the spiritual realm. I always wonder like the Torah mentions specifically that he had nothing material with him. So, and I guess it's true for us too, right? When we have nothing, then you really have to trust in God. As soon as we start having things, is when we stop trusting in God and we start trusting on our things. Am I right here? Right? Let's continue with this. So, back to Proverbs. Proverbs says, then you will walk safely on your path. It's an allusion to Jacob. At the state Jacob departed. And then the second part, the next part of Proverbs. When you lie down, you won't be terrified. And this is again talking about Jacob, okay, and his fears or his controlled fears of Esau and Laban. And then it says, you will lie down and your sleep will be pleasant. It also refers to Jacob, of whom it states, and he lay down in that place, and that the verse we just read before, right? Lori, you said, yes, I get it. Once my flight got rerouted to Dubai, I was terrified. Yes, you see, this is what I say sometimes, that every Jew should have their favorite biblical stories to replenish our faith energies whenever we need it. And this is true because, and I like once in a while to get inspired by the Torah, right? To read something that will inspire me. And of course, we can always read stories about contemporary things and great people that is also inspiring. But the Torah has lots of inspiring stories as well. So I like to do it, but you need to know where to go. You can't just pretend to be inspired about the Torah and you randomly open the Torah everywhere and then you start reading about the census of the Israelite in the desert. And it's the most boring part and there is nothing there for you. But this story, the story of Jacob when he leaves the house, the story of Joseph when he gets thrown to the pit and then put in jail unjustly, and then he becomes, the viceroy of Egypt at the end, those are inspiring stories. But we need to have that kind of things almost like pre-marked so we can find them when we need them. It's, the Torah should be our personal system refresh. Yes, Shelley, as you say, but only if you know where to go. Only if you know what to read to get inspired. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. So, let's continue with Etz Yosef. This is also beautiful what it says. Listen to this inspiration. Although Scripture states merely that Jacob departed, okay, the truth is, and again, we can all imagine this, right? We don't need this rabbi to tell us that he was fleeing for his life. We already knew what Esau told him, that it was a beef between the brothers, and Esau was a very, aggressive man. So, the Torah said that he departed, but we know he was fleeing for his life. The Midrash teaches that even so, Jacob walked securely in the knowledge that God will not allow his enemies to harm him. Jacob was confident of divine protection against his enemies and so had no cause for fear. While he had not even met his future father-in-law Laban, Jacob had probably heard enough about his deceitful reputation and that there would have been grounds for apprehension. How do we know this? Because the Torah gives us enough hints that Jacob and his mothers were very close, to the point that Jacob didn't argue with his mother when she recommended to disguise himself as Esau to get the blessing. And remember that Jacob's mother, Rebecca, came from that family, from the family of Laban. So you can tell that they display similar attitudes here when she taught Jacob how to trick Isaac into giving the blessing to him, right? And then Laban does kind of the same thing. So you could expect that Rebecca will tell Jacob, I know my family, be careful, because Laban is going to try to play tricks on you. I know you're a smart guy. I've seen that on you. So be alert. Be alert. So going back to this, so we have reasons to believe that Jacob had heard enough about his deceitful reputation that there would have been grounds for apprehension. Now, the Midrash indicates that when Jacob lay down to sleep on his way to Haran, God granted him a pleasant night's rest. This is quite the opposite of what we would expect. For those who are being pursued cannot afford to allow themselves to sleep. And even when they do sleep upon the hard grounds with a rock as pillows, as Jacob did, it is certainly not a pleasant sleep. So what we are learning here, there is a little bit of a miraculous retribution from God to Jacob, in the sense that you go to bed with faith in God. Okay? But you know what happened when you fall asleep, then, and this is science, right? When you fall asleep, then your subconscious mind takes over. And then you know that when you have fears, when you're awake, you can kind of control those fears using your conscious mind. You can read stories, you can sing, you can meditate, you can work out on your fears. But once you fall asleep, the subconscious mind takes over, and the subconscious mind never stops, right? It's more difficult to control that part. So it says here because Jacob did everything he could to battle those fears with faith, God did what Jacob couldn't do by himself, and that is also to calm down that subconscious mind so he could have a pleasant sleep. And this is something that we have to learn. This is theology here, Jewish theology, and how miracles work, in the sense that we have to learn that we have the responsibility to do the 100% of what is in our hands. And you have to trust that if you do the 100% that you can do, then God will do what you can't, and not the other way around. You know what I mean? You always have to operate under those bases, that you will never start your day hoping for a miracle. First, you do everything that you can, and then and only then, God will show up with a miracle. This is the same story that we learn, for example, and I want to mention this because of the proximity, because it's coming. This is what happened on Hanukkah. Okay, this is exactly what happened during Hanukkah, or the miracle of the oil. That, remember the Hanukkah, that they have enough oil for only one day and ended up burning for 8 days, and that's great. But it burned for 8 days because they made a decision knowing, they knew that they have enough oil for only one day, and they could have said, okay, we have oil for one day only. Don't bother, lighting the menorah. Don't bother. It's a waste of time. But the rabbi said, but because they overcame that idea, and they nevertheless lit the menorah with the little bit of oil that they had, because they used their 100% of what they had, then God showed up and made the miracle happen. So the light burned for 8 days until more oil came their ways. So this is what we learn here from Jacob as well. He did everything he could. He prayed to God. He found ways to control his anxiety. And then and only then God showed up and helped him overcome also the night so he could sleep well and recover the energies that he was going to need. Back to the chat. Let's see what we have here. Lori said, oh, they separate you from the luggage, sent you to Dubai. Oh, wow. But you see, but you made it. Here you are with us, and I'm pretty sure everything was resolved fine. And what I learned in life, and I know this is easier to saying than done, because it happened to me too. Looking in retrospective, right? Things that I considered in the past being a big deal, in retrospective, I wish I had somebody to convince me back then with the words, it doesn't matter, don't worry. It's going to be okay, right? probably going back in time, I wouldn't take those words. That's what I say. I wish I would have somebody who will be good enough to convince me that it's okay, don't worry, it's going to be fine. And then, yeah, but it's something that eventually we have to learn. We have to learn to trust. And but it doesn't exempt us from using all the resources that we have to try to solve the issues. And then is when we can expect the miracle of God doing whatever we cannot do. Yeah. Well, I hope, Lori, the situation ended up well and you got reunited with your luggage and you got a little bit of peace after that. Let us know about the end of the story. Okay, let's continue here. We have another story here. This is from Rabbi Shimon Yosef Miller. Listen to this. The early days of World War II found Warsaw under intense bombardment by the advancing German armies. The Brisker Rav, Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik, was trapped in the city and stayed at a particular home. Opinions swirled regarding the relative merits of residential homes versus bomb shelters. The residences offer less protection against the bombs. The shelters were fortified, but will become sealed tombs in the event of a direct hit. Deciding that one place was not safer than the other, the Rav stayed where he was. The house, just a few feet away, was reduced to a pile of rubble. The fear was palpable, yet, to the amazement of his host, the Rav would lie down at night and sleep peacefully. How is that possible? They asked him, especially someone like you who is known to agonize in your halachic decision over even remote possibilities of danger to human life. So what happened here, let me back up before we go to the next slide, and it is that, when, and this comes more often when you study medical halacha, Jewish law applied to medicine. For example, when you're talking about organ donations and transplants for one living donor, right, to the recipient, and how much risk you can take, because when you go under the knife, you are even if the doctor tells you that it's okay, it's safe, there is always risk, right? So they are experts that they measure what is the level of risk that you are taking. So there are rabbis like this guy here, like Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik. He liked to study this when there were different situations, to analyze the risk, if it's kosher to take the risk or not. And it looks like, when this guy was in the middle of trying to make all these halachic decisions, he couldn't sleep. He was so disturbed for this that he needed to find an accurate decision. He couldn't sleep, but now that the bombs were falling, he goes and sleeps with no problem, right? So they're wondering, what is different now that allows you to sleep peacefully? So the Rav replied, you misunderstand those fears. They are not motivated by fear of dying. Rather, the Torah obligates me to take all necessary steps to preserve my life, right? And I'm always concerned that perhaps I have not been sufficiently careful in that regard. In the present situation, however, there is no possibility of escaping the danger. One place is not more secure than another. I know then that I have done whatever I am obligated to do. Shall I then be unsettled simply by fear of dying? Thus did King David say when he being pursued by Absalom, I lay down and slept. I awoke, for God supports me. And that's the thing. And again, we are studying here the story of a rabbi who was, in some sort, at the level of faith that Jacob showed at the story in the Torah, with somebody, when I know when we have decisions to make, we get anxious, right? But what if you are in a situation where you don't have any decisions to make. You can't make a decision. It's impossible. The decision was made for you. What do you do? It takes a lot to be at peace with the situation, knowing that there is nothing else you can do. Well, there is something that you can do, of course. You know, don't sleep. Keep thinking. Try to find a solution. But when you reach a point that there is nothing else to do, both Jacob and this rabbi, they both slept because that's what faith did for them. Reach a point that all you can do is to trust in God. And that's what they did. And we struggle. I struggle. I don't know about you. Sometimes I struggle about this level, this saying to myself, there is nothing else I can do. All I can do now is to trust in God. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Lori, you said, I was on my way to Israel, sent my luggage to Amman and me to Dubai. I learned that Hashem will get us to Jerusalem. Jordanians and Emiratis can be pleasant. Okay? Okay. Well, yeah. Shelley, you say, we are often tested. Yeah, but that's another topic. All the tests from God. That may come from another parsha. All the things we have to go through. Okay, so similar situation of which just read, about Jacob, about this rabbi in the middle of a bombardment. This is a common thing in Scripture when you will see the men or the people of faith portrayed as the ones who can sleep in the middle of the storm. Okay? Same happened with Jonah. Remember the one we read this book on Yom Kippur in Ne'ilah. It's a prophet. It was a prophet, the one who was sent to tell the people of Nineveh that they were going to be exterminated unless that they repent. And Nineveh repented, and so they were spared. But this is what happened with Jonah. Listen to this. Remember, he escaped. He took a ship to the opposite direction from Nineveh. So he didn't want to fulfill his mission. So God cast a mighty wind upon the sea. And such a great tempest came upon the sea that the ship was in danger of breaking up. In their fright, the sailors cried out, each to his own god. And they flung the ship's cargo overboard to make it lighter for them. Jonah, meanwhile, had gone down into the hold of the vessel, where he lay down and fell asleep. You see the common denominator here? Can you connect the dots? The captain went over to him and cried out, "How can you be sleeping so soundly? Up, call upon your God. Perhaps the God will be kind to us, and we will not perish." Can you see this? How is it possible? Read it again if you want. Take a minute. Read it again. How is it possible that Jonah was able to sleep in the middle of a storm? Will you be able to sleep in the middle of a storm with all this situation? But listen to this. Before this, let me go back. What happened here is Jonah was well aware of the situation, and he knew that there was nothing that he would pray to God will change the situation. He knew it. There was nothing to do. He knew that the storm was because of him, right? So he knew that all the prayers from the sailors wouldn't change the situation. And when he also reached a point where there was, quote unquote, nothing else to do. So he fell asleep. He fell asleep. Also in the sense that he knew that God still needed him. So he was safe. And also comes, the peace that we feel when we realize that God didn't bring us thus far to leave us alone. It's a huge thing when you can think that way. You can say to yourself, God didn't bring you this far to leave you alone. God was with you all along the way until here. Have faith that God will continue to be with you tomorrow. So that's what it is. Yeah, Brenda, you said we need to have faith daily in every chance decision we make. Yes, but also be careful that faith doesn't mean that you know what is going to happen. All the opposite. Because to me, the opposite of certainty is faith. And the opposite of faith is certainty. If you have certainty, you don't need faith. Faith in when you don't know what is going to happen, but you trust that whatever is going to happen, somehow is going to be good for you. So that things are not happening and are not going to happen to you, but for you. That's what it is. But always remember these words. To me, it changed a lot when I learned that the opposite of faith is certainty. If you have certainty, you don't need faith. Do you need Jacob knew what was going to happen tomorrow when he fell asleep? No. No. Do you think the rabbi who was sleeping in the middle of a bombardment knew what was going to happen tomorrow? No. Jonah also didn't know what was going to happen. And you know what happened with Jonah? Eventually, he ended up inside the fish and think he didn't know that. He didn't know that. But nevertheless, he was able to sleep because he knew that, whatever was going to happen tomorrow is what is supposed to happen. And it will be something good to him about it. Okay, let's continue. Another text from Midrash Rabbah, and again, remember, once again, Midrash Rabbah will not go and talk right away about the Parsha. It's going to take its little detour first, this time bringing a verse from the book of Psalms. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman began his discourse with the following exposition. Shir la'ma'alot esayna ele'arim, a song of the ascents. I rise my eyes to the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from God. Have you ever heard this one? There are many beautiful songs talking about that. Shir la'ma'alot. Shir la'ma'alot. Esa enai eleharim. Me'aim yavo esri. Esri mehim Hashem. Oh, beautiful song. So, okay, opening verse by Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman. Now he continued connecting the verse with the Parsha. This was spoken by Jacob, who meant, I rise my eyes to my mentors. So here the Midrash is changing the vowels of the word. It said Heharim, to the mountains. But then remember, the original Hebrew didn't have nekudot, the dots, the vowels, no vowelized. Then the rabbis added it. So you can also read, instead Esainai el Heharim, you can read Esainai el Hahorim. Horim, to my mentors, or Horim could be also parents. It depends on the context. Okay, so what it says here, it says, Jacob is saying, Esainai el Horim. I rise my eyes to my mentors. What does it mean, I rise my eyes to my mentors? Let's continue with Midrash Rabbah. That means to my teachers and to my instructors in serving God. Jacob continued, where will my help come? Well, when Eliezer went to bring Rebekah as a wife for Isaac, what is it written concerning him, concerning Eliezer? Then the servant took the 10 camels of his master's camels and set out with all the bounty of his master in his hand, but I have with me not a single nose ring or bracelet. Okay, so let's see. This is a wonderful thing. And how often, when we struggle, we try to remember what our mentors taught us, right? And mentors remember. This is what I like, the word mentor. And what is the difference between a mentor and a teacher? To me, a mentor is somebody who already made the mistakes, so you don't have to. A mentor is somebody who learned by mistakes, by experience. They have the experience because they already learned it from life. And I always mention that you have two ways to learn. You learn by mistakes or you learn by mentors, right? Because you make a mistakes, you learn from the mistakes. But if you have a mentor who already made a mistake, and the mentor can tell you what not to do to avoid that, well, hello, I rather learn from your mistakes than from my mistakes. I don't want to make mistakes. It's painful. So we get close to mentors who already made the mistake, so you won't. But this works only if you remember their words at the right time. So that's why it says here, I raise my eyes to the mountains, where my help will come from. Okay, that's the thing. So going back to the Etz Yosef, it will say Jacob was on his way to find a wife and look to the ways of Abraham and Isaac for guidance. When he said, I lift my eyes to my mentors. Who were his mentors? Isaac and Abraham. Okay, there was not much else in those days. So what did he learn from them? Well, probably also the story of Eliezer. So when he did so, he recalled how Eliezer took many camels laden with his master's wealth to bestow upon the girl who will marry Isaac. Jacob, on the other hand, had nothing to his name and feared that his chances of finding a suitable partner were therefore hampered. So he calls out, where will my help come from? Now, in the Hebrew of that verse of the book of Psalms that I just quoted, the word for help is Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai, right? Ezri. So the word for help, Ezri, is an allusion to a wife. For Eve was called Adam's help, and the Torah calls it Ezer. You see, Ezer, Ezri is the same word. So Jacob was thus asking, without any money, because Eliezer had all these camels, but I have nothing, not even nose ring, nothing. Without any money, how will I attract a wife? So he was asking his mentors, give me guidance to try to learn how can I get a wife without nothing. Where will my Ezri come from? So Ezri, at the end, that's what he said in the book of Psalms, Ezri, in the sense of my wife, not my help, but my wife, Ezri me'im Adonai. My wife will come from God, in the sense that, don't think that you have to be a millionaire to marry a beautiful person or a wonderful person. You don't have to, because we have examples of people who had all the money in the world and they marry a person who made them miserable. And all the opposite. People who had nothing, but God guided them into meeting a wonderful human being. And that is what also we are learning from Jacob in this week's Parsha, right? Brenda, you say, where was J-Date? Yeah, well, I think the problem is he didn't have, Wi-Fi coverage there, so that's why he couldn't use it. That's the thing. And I know that they had Wi-Fi back in the day, and we know that because there are archaeological teams that they couldn't find any wires in ancient Middle East. So the conclusions for them was that everything was wireless back then. Am I right? Yeah, of course. So that is the thing. Okay, and one more thing here before we end. Rabbi Abahu began his discourse on this passage with the following verse: house and riches are an inheritance from one's ancestors, but a wise wife comes from God, right? So he would say sometimes a man goes to find his mate, and sometimes his mate comes to find him. In the case of Isaac, his mate came to him. As it states, Isaac went out to supplicate in the field towards the evening, and he raised his eyes and saw, and behold, camels were coming, etc. And Rebekah raised her eyes and saw Isaac. She inclined while upon the camel, right? And so Rebekah came to him. But on the other hand, we learn Jacob, on the other hand, went to find his mate, and as it's written, Jacob departed. Okay, so it's a good thing. So the reality of life. Sometimes it's again to prove that when it comes to our soulmate, it's whatever God wants. And you know, sometimes you can try, and nothing happen, and then you meet a person by coincidence, like Isaac. And sometimes all the opposite. You find the person. Very interesting. Okay, so thank you for. Okay, so I'm glad to hear that the mic sounds good. It's it's pretty much the mic that I'm using here is the fanciest thing you can get. I don't know if you can see it. I will raise it. Look at the size of this thing. It's this mic will be the envy of any decent YouTuber, by the way. Okay, and we also use this mic to record with my youth choir. So I do that. Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in. And remember, this class is going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. Central Time. Okay, we are in Central here in Winnipeg. And what else? Well, happy Thanksgiving to all our American friends. And remember, as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, for the Jew, every day is Thanksgiving. It's a part of our name. Jew comes from Yehuda, and the root of Yehuda is Hodu, which means thanksgiving. So it's in our essence. So let's be thankful, guys, for everything. And maybe it's one of the easiest way to find faith is through gratitude. Okay, just removing a little bit of expectations, because expectations makes you unhappy. You know that when you don't meet your expectations, you suffer. So sometimes it's about to lower or remove expectations and trust, and just being grateful for what life offers. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Please stay safe and hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.